The collision of punk rock and heavy metal with horror movies and sci-fi has resulted in some of the greatest bands of all time. Chief among them are the Misfits, who combined a fascination with B-movies, pre-code horror comics, and Famous Monsters of Filmland, with aggressive but incessantly catchy punk rock into an iconic blend that influenced everyone from Metallica to Rob Zombie to Black Veil Brides. Here we'll take a look at 10 movies that inspired the Misfits. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it with your friends, and subscribe to MovieWeb to keep up with the conversation about all of the things we love. When the band formed in New Jersey in the famous punk year of 1977, the moniker they chose was the name of a 1961 movie starring Marilyn Monroe, the screen siren who also inspired the first solo single from singer and songwriter Glenn Danzig, Who Killed Marilyn. The Misfits disintegrated in 1983, with Glenn moving on to the similarly legendary Sam Hain and Danzig. Original bassist Jerry Only revived the Misfits in 1995, with an abundance of new songs drawn from old movies and books. But for this video, we're concentrating on the original Misfits, which is also the name Glenn and Jerry chose when they finally reunited in 2016. The Astro-Zombies. Static Age, the Misfits' original debut album, wasn't released in its entirety until long after they'd broken up, which makes 1982's Walk Among Us their official debut. Side B cut Astro-Zombies takes its name from the low-budget 1968 movie, The Astro-Zombies. The lyrics are sung from the point of view of the movie's mad scientist, who was played by late character actor John Carradine.
Franchel, remove number 9 from the thermal freeze casket, preparing for brain transfer and total astromobilization.
The movie is also memorable for its inclusion of the Japanese-born Tura Satana from Faster Pussycat Kill Kill. The Misfits' Astro-Zombies has been covered by My Chemical Romance, Pennywise, the Ataris, and the band fronted by ex-Misfits guitarist Bobby Steele, the Undead. Blood Feast. Herschel Gordon Lewis directed, shot, and scored what was arguably the first splatter film ever made, Blood Feast. Ritual sacrifice, cannibalism, and murder are all on the menu in Blood Feast, which was made in 1963 for less than $25 grand, but went on to gross $4 million. Though Danzig has said he originally intended Blood Feast as a song for Sam Hain, he ended up including it on the Misfits' second and final LP. The Brain Eaters. The Brain Eaters is an independently financed, black and white sci-fi horror B-movie, released in 1958, and often paired with similar fare as a double feature. Roger Corman was one of the film's producers, and future Mr. Spock actor Leonard Nimoy had a small role.
Now I hold a position of a much higher order.
Brain Eaters, the song, appeared on the Misfits' Walk Among Us. Die Die My Darling. Distributed in Hammer Films' native UK as Fanatic, and later retitled for America, Die Die My Darling features memorable turns from Tallulah Bankhead, Stephanie Powers, and Donald Sutherland. However, the cover artwork from the Misfits' 1984 single isn't from the 1965 film. It's actually an image lifted and repurposed from an old horror comic, Chamber of Chills number 19, one of the band's best-known songs. Die Die My Darling is one of many Misfits tunes covered by Metallica over the years. Green Hell. Green Hell was one of the first Misfits songs covered by Metallica, who were introduced to the New Jersey punk band's music by bassist Cliff Burton, who had the Misfits' fiend skull tattooed on his shoulder. Green Hell most likely isn't named after the 1940 jungle adventure. No, 1957 sci-fi B-movie Monster from Green Hell is more up the Misfits' alley, with its drive-in theater-ready monsters versus the military. The Hills Have Eyes. The Misfits didn't name a song after this 1977 Wes Craven horror classic, but the title is right there in the song Earth AD, which has been covered by vegan straight-edge stalwarts Earth Crisis and Swedish black metalers Marduk. A 6 Degrees of Separation game with the Hills Have Eyes actor Michael Berryman and music is pretty easy. In the 80s, he was in 2 different Motley Crue music videos. In the 90s, he played the Skull Cowboy in the rock and roll heavy comic book movie The Crow, though his scenes were left uncompleted following the tragic on-set death of Brandon Lee. Horror Hotel. Released overseas as The City of the Dead, Horror Hotel, as it was called in America, starred screen legend Christopher Lee, best known to modern audiences as the evil wizard from the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies, and Sith Lord Darth Tyrannus, aka Fallen Jedi Count Dooku.
I've become more powerful than any Jedi.
Lee, of course, made many classic horror flicks, including his multiple turns as Count Dracula for Hammer Films. He also made music. The witchcraft tale Horror Hotel was filmed in the UK but set in America. It wasn't released in the US until 1963, 3 years after its UK run, with a bunch of its references to Lucifer censored out. Since the Misfits released Horror Hotel, clips and dialogue from the movie have shown up in work by Iron Maiden, King Diamond, Rob Zombie, and In This Moment. Night of the Living Dead. The late, great George A. Romero unwittingly revolutionized and redefined what we now call zombies with his 1968 indie debut, Night of the Living Dead, directed, shot, edited, and co-written by the filmmaker, who later made several sequels. The Misfits' Night of the Living Dead single was issued on Halloween 1979, with Where Eagles Dare and a cover of Alan Sherman's Rat Fink on the B-side. Return of the Fly. The Misfits never hid their affinity for B-movies, horror, splatter, exploitation, and sci-fi. For a single song example, look no further than Return of the Fly, which says Return of the Fly with Vincent Price in the actual lyrics, in case there was any doubt as to whether this song was based on the 1959 movie starring the screen icon. Night of the Ghouls. Hollywood exploitation movie master Ed Wood wrote, directed, and produced Night of the Ghouls, which featured the legendary Tor Johnson in 1957. Though it was previewed in a 1960 issue of Famous Monsters of Filmland, the film was considered lost for many years, as there weren't enough funds available for post-production. It finally came out in 1984, 3 years after Ghouls Night Out was first released by the Misfits, as part of the 3 Hits from Hell EP. Speaking of Famous Monsters magazine, the Misfits' iconic logo was created using the same lettering as Famous Monsters. Their now ubiquitous Crimson Ghost or Fiend Skull logo is also rooted in classic B-movie cinema, dating back to the black and white 1940s serial, The Crimson Ghost. This is by no means a complete list of movies that inspired the devil-locked horror punks. Jerry Only and Bobby Steele have said We Are 138 was inspired by the George Lucas movie THX 1138, though Danzig later contradicted them, saying in a 2000 interview, they didn't write it and they don't know what it's about. If you've got better information on the Misfits movie crossovers, let us know in the comments. We hope you enjoyed this look at 10 movies that inspired the Misfits. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it with your friends, and subscribe to MovieWeb to keep up with the conversation about all of the things we love.